close parenthesis, provide an emergency subsidy to around 18, open parenthesis, the number 18, close parenthesis, million low-income households, colon, provided that the subsidy shall amount to a minimum of 5,000 pesos to a maximum of 8,000 pesos a month for 2, open parenthesis, the number 2, close parenthesis, months, colon, provided, comma, further, comma, that the subsidy shall be computed based on the prevailing regional minimum wage rates. Provided finally, comma, that the subsidy received from the current conditional cash transfer program and rice subsidy shall be taken into consideration in the computation of the emergency subsidy as provided for in this act. I submit, Mr. President.
All right. Very good. Any objection? Adopted. Hindi, ganda. Eksakto lahat eh.
Okay ba?
Okay.
Okay.
Page 3.
Thank you. Mr. President, renumber the succeeding
Yes.
subsections accordingly.
So renumbered.
Thank you.
Any amendments on page 3?
On page 2 pa rin tayo. Yeah. Still on
Still
page
on page
2 because
two. I'm sorry.
continuing from the previous amendments, after the previous amendments, insert a new subsection to read as follow.
All right. The new subsection 4.
Yes. Ano ba? 4?
Yes,
Nakasulat dito.
Because the one that you introduced was
4,
3.
yes, 4.
A new section 4. Okay.
Ensure that all public health workers are protected by providing them additional compensation or COVID-19 special risk allowance, and to direct the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, open parenthesis, PhilHealth, close parenthesis, to shoulder all medical expenses of public health workers in case of exposure to COVID-19 or any work-related injury or disease during the duration of the emergency. I submit, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Renumber the succeeding subsections accordingly.
So renumbered.
Finally, on page 3, moving on, I don't mean it's the end. I just mean I finally left page 2.
Yes.
On
Page 3.
Page 3, line 6, after the semicolon, insert the sentence, provided that, comma, all LGUs shall be authorized to utilize more than 5%, open parenthesis, the number 5%, close parenthesis, of the amount allocated for their calamity fund, subject to additional funding and support from the national government.
All right.
Submit.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Ano ba to? Just, patawag dito, grammar, Mr. President, grammatical correction. On page 3, line 24, delete the word signified and replace it with signify.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
A minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Social distancing. how does it read? Ensure that. Borrow na lang. Page 3, ay no, saan na yun? Ito? Ah,
Kasi kay Senator Bing nakasulat donation acceptance. So parang kailangan lang
donation.
ng comma.
And ensure that donation.
Kanya yan kasi. Tapos comma.
Donation?
Ganun lang ang meaning.
Donation and acceptance.
Hindi. Donation, comma, acceptance, and distribution.
So, comma. Okay, okay. Thank you. Mr. President. Ready to resume.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, I'd just like to explain the reason for the delay is because I'm trying to observe social distancing. So the updates of my staff are transmitted to me via the internet, but it wasn't loading. So I wasn't receiving the updated corrections that they were pointing out to me.
All right.
So we have crossed that line and are now violating the social distance rule. Anyway, Mr. President, my next amendment is on page 3, line 38. It is just a grammatical, a style punctuation correction.
Editorial amendment.
Insert a comma between the words donation and the word donation and the word acceptance.
All right. A comma. Editorial amendment. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Number 10.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item is still on page 3, line 41. After the word delayed, remove the semicolon, insert the sentence, and that health products for donations have product registration issued by the regulatory agency. Mr. President, I'm sorry, may I just change something? Can I ask for another minute suspension?
Session suspended.
FDA products lang po. If required. Diba? So, and that health products for donation, if required to be certified, in the FDA, shall have certified or cleared, no? Parang ganon. Oh, can we skip that and just go back? Paayos mo, ha? Tayo na lang dito. Sige. Thank you. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, I do have an amendment on page 3, line 41, but I'm asking for better language. So can we just skip that part and I'll move to another page?
All right, we'll go back.
Thank you.
Page 4.
On page 5, nothing on page 4.
No amendments on page 4.
None,
From the
Mr.
body,
President.
we go to page 5. Page 5.
On page 5, after line 32, insert a new subsection which shall read as, parenthesis, open parenthesis, close parenthesis 12. Ensure the availability of essential goods, comma, in particular food and medicine, comma, by adopting measures as may reasonably be necessary to facilitate and/or minimize disruption to the supply chain, comma, especially for basic commodities and services to the maximum extent possible. I submit, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Renumber the succeeding successions accordingly, please.
So renumbered.
Thank you. Next item, Mr. President, is
Senator Tolentino, you have an anterior amendment on page 5.
Yes, Mr. President, with indulgence of the sponsor, between the words taxes and other, insert the word "and."
What line is this?
Line 32,
Line
the
32.
original line 32, Mr. President.
Import duties.
Import duties, comma,
Uh-huh.
taxes, and other fees, Mr. President.
And what does the sponsor say?
sorry, can His Honor repeat that again?
Line 32.
Yes.
Duties, comma, taxes, and other fees.
Yes, thank you. No, we accept, Mr. President.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. So we are done with
Page 5. Page
page
6.
5. Yes, we have an amendment on page 6. It is on line 16. It's a very minor amendment. Line 16, after the word unreleased, insert a comma. I submit.
Editorial amendment, any objection? Adopted.
Editorial, ano pala yung tawag doon?
On page 6 still, line 19, after the words measures, insert an open bracket.
Open bracket.
Line 19.
What do? You retain the comma?
Sandali ah.
Mr. President, let me try to understand.
Open bracket? Ano ba yun? Baka ibang line.
Balikan natin. Mr. President, can we skip that? I think we made a mistake on the line number. We have to look for it because it doesn't make sense to me.
All right. Withdrawn.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Still on page 6.
Still on page 6.
Line 20. Meron din to eh. Meron din open bracket si line 6. Number 15 na lang yung title.
Next item, Mr. President, is on page 7.
Page 7.
Page 7, after line 6, insert a new subsection. A new subsection to read as, open parenthesis, capital letter G, close parenthesis, under the Department of Education dash school dash base feeding program. I submit because the next amendments are on the other lines, or would you like me to continue?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page,
You proceed.
thank you, Mr. President. On page 7, line 10, after the words item slash comma, delete the word end. I submit.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Paul is recognized.
With your permission, Mr. President, can we go back on page 5, line 22?
Well, if it's an anterior amendment,
Can
page
we finish
5.
this so that I just complete that paragraph on the
Oh,
school
okay.
feeding?
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just
of
one
course.
more to complete that paragraph.
Yes, Mr.
All right,
President.
you were still on page 7. Go
Yes.
ahead.
On page 7, line 11, after the word grants, insert a comma and the phrase, and supplemental feeding program for daycare children. I submit.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we're ready for the comments or amendments of
Page 5.
Okay.
Senator.
Going back to page 5, Senator Paul, you're
Mr.
recognized.
President, I think the sponsor earlier expressed her willingness to include this. Our suggestion that on page 5, line 22, after the word government, insert a new proviso which reads as follows. Provided finally that a special risk allowance in an appropriate amount to be determined by the Department of Budget and Management, Department of Finance, and Department of Health on top of the hazard pay shall be given to all HRH serving in the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Actually, Mr. President, we introduced what we believe is our response to Her Honor's request or recommendation by way of the amendment on page 2, line 37. I can read it again.
Yes, please, just for the
Yes.
record.
And number 4, ensure that all public health workers are protected by providing them additional compensation or COVID or otherwise or COVID-19 special risk allowance, and to direct the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, PhilHealth, to shoulder all medical expenses of public health workers in case of exposure to COVID-19 or any work-related injury or disease during the duration of the emergency.
Oh, that will be sufficient. I'm sorry to have missed that. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. President.
All right. So, any other amendment on page 7? Oh, Senator
Mr.
Tolentino.
President,
Mr. President, I think for clarity, since I went back to
Page
page 2,
five.
line 37, page 2, the item that I read
page
to
2, yes.
Senator Grace po, I think for clarity, may I insert, otherwise known as, no? Or otherwise? May or pa rin. After the word or on the third line, or
Of, third line of,
the phrase that I read, ensure that all public health workers are protected by providing them with additional compensation, otherwise known as COVID-19 Special Risk Allowance. So delete or and insert the phrase, otherwise known as COVID-19 Special Risk Allowance.
all right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we were on, Senator Tolentino.
Mr. President,
Yes.
not an amendment, but just a manifestation to form part of the parliamentary exchange and as part of the statutory construction that this representation believes that Section 9 relative to temporary human resources for health, such as medical and allied medical staff that would be receiving appropriate compensation and allowances, Mr. President. My manifestation is that this would include my proposal to have, if granted by the DOH, the 1,500 medical students that would form part of the temporary workforce, medical force, they shall receive the same compensation, Mr. President. Just a manifestation.
All right.
Thank
We
you,
place
Mr.
that on record.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that manifestation. We have apprised DOH of the position of Senator Tolentino on that
All right.
matter.
Senator Grace po.
Just being cautious, I know that the good sponsor added a provision for an additional an additional compensation for the frontline workers. Could we possibly put a line there that says on top of the hazard pay?
Yes, we may. Her Honor is worried that it might be considered in
Yes.
lieu of. No
It-
problem.
Yes, thank you.
I will propose the appropriate wording.
Thank you, Mr. President.
In addition to, so.
That is again on page 2. In the proposed amendment introduced by Senator Pia.
Protected by providing them additional compensation, otherwise known as allowance, comma, in addition to their actual hazard pay, comma.
In addition to the actual hazard pay, okay. Allowance, okay. Mr. President, I will insert this after the word allowance so that it reads as follows. Ensure that all public health workers are protected by providing them additional compensation, otherwise known as COVID-19 Special Risk Allowance, comma, in addition to the, ano pangalan nun?
Actual
The-
hazard pay.
The hazard pay, is that the complete name? The full name? Ano ba? Wala pa.
No, wala. Ayan, actual hazard pay. Actual hazard pay. So, special risk allowance, comma, in addition to the actual hazard duty pay, comma.
In addition to the... Mr. President, I withdraw. Let me write that down.
Page 5.
In
Ay, sorry,
addition
page,
to...
tama.
In
Page
addition
two,
to
page-
the... What's the name? In addition to the... What's the name of
In addition
the...
to the actual hazard duty pay.
No, is that the name of the hazard pay? Actual hazard pay?
It's in the bill na notification.
What's in the bill? Hazard pay. Why did you
hazard
say
pay.
actual? Just say a hazard pay.
Oh, sige na. Hazard
Okay, in
duty
addition
pay
to the
na-
hazard duty pay. Okay. So dun nga, after
After
risk
allowance.
allowance. In addition to the hazard pay. In addition to the hazard pay.
Yeah.
In addition to the hazard pay,
Comma.
comma, and to direct. Okay, so after allowance, in addition to the hazard pay, comma, okay. Mr. President, ready to resume? Just to...
Yes, we're
Oh,
in
okay.
session.
Ready to complete my...
Yes, we are still on
Okay.
number
Two.
5 of page
Yeah.
2.
Page 2, line 37. So I'll read the whole the new, the revised subsection. Ensure that all public health workers are protected by providing them additional compensation, otherwise known as COVID-19 Special Risk Allowance, comma, in addition to the actual duty hazard,
Hazard duty. Sabi niya actual lang. Actual hazard duty.
to the actual hazard duty
Pay.
pay,
Comma.
comma,
The actual hazard duty pay.
pay, comma, and to direct the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, PhilHealth, to shoulder all medical expenses of public health workers in case of exposure to COVID-19 or any work-related injury or disease during the duration of the emergency. I submit, Mr. President.
All right. Any Senator Lacson is recognized.
I think it sounds redundant, Mr. President. I think we should remove already the first word additional because subsequently she used the word in addition to. It's just an editorial
Okay, okay.
amendment, Mr. President.
Wait, ensure that all
Any additional
allowance,
All
otherwise
right.
known as additional.
Senator Gordon.
Mr. President, as they are sorting it out,
So paano naman?
and this is in line with the thrust
okay.
of that particular amendment, Mr. President, I would like to add the word in the last line. Add, provided that a compensation of 100,000 pesos
I mean, get-
shall be given to healthcare professionals who may contract COVID-19 infection while in the line of duty, semicolon. Provided further that a compensation of 1 million pesos shall be given to healthcare professionals who may die while fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, Mr. President. No, if you die fighting the, you get that. Oh. Will the gentlelady accept?
Where do you propose to put that?
After the line on the ensuring that additional compensation, this will be after that line, Mr. President, after that paragraph. We will just said provided that a compensation of 100,000 pesos shall be given to healthcare professionals who may contract COVID infection while in the line of duty, and provide for that a compensation of 1 million pesos shall be given to healthcare professionals who may die while fighting the COVID-19 pandemic.
In principle, Mr. President, of course, we all want to give that. May I just ask for a minute suspension to confer with the body?
Yes, and we completely rewrite this
That's
one.
correct.
This is already,
Yes.
yes,
We will rewrite it
overloaded.
so everybody
All
can
mixed up.
see. Yes.
it's all
We will
mixed
do
up.
that.
Session suspended.
Tama.
Kaya tinatanong ko nila kung public or private. I don't think there's a distinction. There's no distinction. Ako nag-ano kay Kim. Wala ka smart. Wala ako. Oo. iPad ko nakakonect. Pag nag-type ako, lumalabas kay Kim niya yun. Ano hindi lumalabas? Hindi naka-highlight sa kanya?
Yeah, hindi. So, nakakonect ako sa smart, parang hindi malabo. Pag nakakonect ako sa
Ito naka-highlight yan. Yan yung, wait lang, it's about whether or not we can.
Lapit na. Oo nga.
Di na alam.
Yung 18 million, nasan yun? Okay.
Ano? natin mabuti. Sundan natin ang mga sinasabi nila mabuti.
Transcription, meron tayong endorsement na yun.
Para tuloy-tuloy, para matapos ko.
Yes, sir. Ready na rin yung transmitter namin. Para mahanap nila itong version. Kahit yung
Ito naman sakripisyo natin na to. Wala sa kalighingan ng sakripisyo ng mga doktor sa mga nurse. Hindi kailangan ng motion nun, ano?
Anong number niya? Number 4. Kasi nagawa ko ng subsection. Number 4 or number 6 on page 2.
Ano?
Ayos pa. Parang yung health workers.
Healthcare professionals and paramedical. Healthcare
Ayan,
medical
ayan.
professionals.
Ayan.
Professional and paramedical siya lang. Sa third, professionals and paramedical.
Pinapakita hindi naman kasama yung mga administrative staff, health workers.
Oo, yung parang naka-frontline lang.
Oo, medical and paramedical.
But I don't know what
maliit lang yun.
paramedical means, ha? So,
Yung
kayo-
wording lang
Medical
yung
and
nagkakagulo.
allied medical.
Ayun,
Nagkasala-salamat na eh.
Allied medical.
So, ano yan? Hindi kasamang, ano? actual hazard pay. Tapos bago na to, and to direct PhilHealth to shoulder all medical expense public health in case of exposure to COVID or any work-related injury or disease during the duration of the emergency. Provided a compensation of 100,000 shall be given to public, but 100,000 na to, public and private healthcare professionals and paramedics who shall 1 million, hindi 100,000.
ko, i-delete lang dito si N.
The end.
Si N hanggang D. So, and other such may include in the FY 2020 as the President may be. So, tatanggalin, kasama ko sa amendment, tanggalin yung bracket na yan.
Ito, tsaka,
Tapos dadagdagan ng bracket ito.
so
Yes.
magkakaano siya. So parang ang gusto nila mangyari.
Tapos, add, dadagdag ko kay Ayo, add and between operations. Like, after the word operation, delete comma and like, yes, it's here. 13, 14, okay.
Ready? Can I see it?
Yung numbering. Hindi kasi I inserted. So I inserted today.
What? Page 6, number 6? What?
So I did different ones now.
So where do I start? Or what? Okay, so dito ako on page 2, item 4, ganyan. On page 2, basta I'll just read this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pero yung after niyan kasi since nagdagdag tayo ng marami.
Oh.
May mga
So,
numbering sa
so sabihin ko na lang renumber everything according, after that renumber accordingly. Okay.
Kasi may clarity kasi pakita ko lang. Kasi katulad niyan, meron tayong mga 12, may iba na yung numbering niya. It will take time to
Yeah, I'll just tell them. Kaya nila yun. Okay, what do I have? Ensure that all public health protected by the... So all public health workers are... explain ko na lang to, ha? Para maayos sa kanila. All public health workers will get special risk allowance. That's one, okay? And then two, PhilHealth to shoulder medical expenses of public and private health worker. And three, okay na tayo? I'm just reading it, yes. And ano yung third ko? Provide compensation, no? 100 to public. So 2 and 3 are public and private. And 1 million public.
Session resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I just explain what the amendment will be? This is all with respect to the additional benefits we want to give to health workers. So they will be divided in 2 sections for clarity. In the first part, we will be providing a special risk allowance, a COVID-19 special risk allowance, in addition to the hazard pay granted to public health workers. So to clarify, that is for public health workers. And then, I will introduce another amendment directing PhilHealth to shoulder all medical expenses of public and private health workers in case of exposure to COVID-19 or any work-related injury or disease during the duration of the emergency. So in this, for PhilHealth, it will be both public and private health workers. And finally, compensation of 100,000 to public and private healthcare workers who may contract the severe COVID-19 infection while in the line of duty, provided further that we have a 1 million compensation to both public and private health workers who may die while fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. And this shall have, this provision shall have retroactive effect. So that
Okay.
is the gist of it, which I will now read as the actual wording for the amendments.
But so that we are sure that it is being recorded properly, this will fall under number 4 or number 5 of
The
of
first
Section 4.
item will be 4. Then they're all separate, Mr. President. 4, 5, and 6. The 3
4,
items.
5, and 6,
And
and
I will
then-
include that in my amendment.
All right.
Okay,
So
Mr.
the amendment that you proposed first at for number 3 remains. You know, the
Yes, number 3
provision
remains.
for the 18 million and then 5 to 8,000, that remains, all right? We're not touching that.
Yes, we are not
All right.
touching
We're
that. Yes,
touching
correct.
after that. All right.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
You may
President.
proceed.
So, continuing from those previous amendments on line page after those amendments aforementioned, insert a new subsection to read as follows. Open parenthesis, number 4, close parenthesis. Ensure that all public health workers are protected by providing them with the quotation, COVID-19 special risk allowance, close quotation, comma, in addition to the hazard pay granted under the Magna Carta of Public Health Workers or Republic Act number 7305, semicolon. I submit.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Subject to style, Mr. President, because I think the...
Subject to start.
Subject to style.
Sure.
Subject to start.
To follow after the new to follow after the aforesaid amendment, insert another new subsection to read as follows. Open parenthesis, 5, close parenthesis. Direct the PhilHealth Insurance Corporation, open parenthesis, PhilHealth, close parenthesis, to shoulder all medical expenses of public and private health workers in case of exposure to COVID-19 or any work-related injury or disease during the duration of the emergency, semicolon. I submit.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Still, continuing after the aforesaid amendments, insert another subsection to read as follows. Open parenthesis, number 6, close parenthesis. Provide compensation of 100,000 pesos, open parenthesis, 100,000 pesos in numbers, close parenthesis, to public and private healthcare workers who may contract severe COVID-19 infection while in the line of duty, colon, provided, comma, further, comma, that a compensation of 1 million pesos, open parenthesis, 1 million pesos, close parenthesis in numbers, shall be given to public and private healthcare workers, comma, who may die while fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, semicolon, provided, comma, finally, this shall have retroactive effect. I submit, Mr. President.
Again, Mr. President,
And
subject to
this
style.
and this shall have a retroactive effect.
That's one way, Mr. President, or you can have may or may have or have acquired the disease, Mr. President.
May. Who may or may have?
Yeah.
May or may have.
Yes.
So I will,
Because that means it's really counting it from the time they got the disease. Although, of course, the last line that the Senate President spoke of, I think will suffice. And that's why I'm saying subject to style to make it
okay.
more.
So while we go over it, maybe your staff can help
Yes,
look at it
I'll
and
do that.
revise. Okay.
But subject to style.
Yes,
All
Mr.
right. Any
President.
objection? Adopted.
Mr. President, may I ask that the whole body sponsor that amendment, because I think that's very important.
All right.
Thank
We
you.
will place that on record.
Mr. President, may we ask that all the if you will recall, we already finished amendments on page 3 and so on, and there are numbers there that need to be adjusted accordingly.
Yes. So renumbered.
Thank you.
Now, would you like to go back to page 5 now, or you proceed after your page 7? Are you ready now with page 5 or not yet? We can proceed with page 7 so that we can facilitate.
Do I have the word?
We left this out.
Yes, yes, Mr. President. 5 or 6? 5? Page 5 or page 6? Tapos na si subside.
After line 32 of page 5.
Binitin ko?
Para lang sure.
Sige.
Oo, parang stop.
Essentially, that's done. May question ba yan? Tapos na yan. Yeah. Mr. President, I believe we're done with page 5. On the supply chain, we are on page 6, where we had the
Alright.
commas and...
And then you're done with that. We were already on page 7.
You have to go back to the open bracket.
We had that open bracket amendment, Mr. President, that was confusing, but I understand it now.
In page 5,
Page 6, Mr. President.
page 6.
Page 6, line 19. Okay, so on page 6,
Okay.
on page 6, line 19, before the word end, insert a bracket. I submit, Mr. President.
Insert a bracket.
Insert a bracket.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you. And then on page 6, line 19, after the word operations, delete the comma.
Delete the comma. Any
And,
objection?
yes, and
then
replace it with end.
replace it with end.
So it
And-
will read operations end response.
Any objection? Adopted.
Thank you. And then to complete this item, on page 6, line 20, before the word as, delete the bracket. It's an
yun.
open bracket.
All right, open bracket. And you will retain the bracket after.
Yes, so that we now
Alright.
have a different bracket.
Okay.
I submit, Mr. President.
So now we understand. Now, any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. On line 7, feeding program, Department of Education.
Page
We are
7.
done.
You're done with page 7. Are you
Are we
done with
done
page
with-
7?
That I'm not sure, Mr. President. Ano ba? Ano ba tatapos natin? May I ask the Secretariat to tell us where we ended last.
Yung tapos na yung feeding program.
We finished
Line
feeding
11
program.
of page 7. I distinctly remember.
Okay. So we are on page 8,
Page 8,
line 11.
line 11.
After the number 3, insert the word hereof.
Hereof, before the semicolon.
Yes. I submit, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 8, thank you. On page 8, line 25, delete the phrase from March 16 to April 15, 2020, and replace it with of the enhanced community quarantine. I submit.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you. On page 8, line 30, add the words minimum of before the word 30. And on line 31 to 32, delete the phrase from March 16 to April 15, 2020, and replace with of the enhanced community quarantine.
Within the period of, you're removing from,
Delete the phrase March 16 to April 15, 2020, and replace it with of the enhanced community quarantine.
within the period from, will you read how number 23 will,
Yes, Ms.
provide for a minimum of 30
Within the
days
period.
grace period, 30-day grace period on residential rents falling due within the period.
Delete the phrase from March 16 to 2020.
Including the word
Ano,
from.
From, yes, sorry, Mr. President,
Yan.
including the word from. It's not here.
Okay. Delete the word from, margin, and replace with ECQ.
Yes, within
Within the
the
period
period of the enhanced, yes, within
the
the period
enhanced
of the enhanced community
community
quarantine.
quarantine. All right, any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
The one before
Anything
that,
else on page
kailangan
8?
din nung from. Yung sa
The
earlier. Are you
anterior
sure?
amendment, Senator Tolentino.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you.
Amendment.
Okay.
Mr. President, just
Number
a point of
22 na
inquiry.
tayo. Sure.
Yes, if the good sponsor would yield
Yes.
to a clarificatory issue. A while ago, Mr. President, we discussed the retroactive effect of the payments to be made, and the word pandemic was used. It appears, Mr. President, that the pandemic rating was issued pursuant to a directive of the World Health Organization, and there is a different date, Mr. President, between the pandemic date and the epidemic date, Mr. President. So, may we clarify from the good sponsor which is which? Which would apply?
In terms of our references
Yes,
to...
Mr. President.
I will have to go back to the actual... Do you recall, does his honor recall what section he saw that, so I can just...
The section where Senator Lacson suggested that it be have a retroactive effect. The 1
I yield the
million.
floor to Senator Gordon, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Mr. President, with your
Senator
permission,
Gordon. Senator Gordon.
this is really planned to retroactivity. Now, we cannot go on pandemic and epidemic because people die nonetheless. So what we'd like to do, as suggested by the good Secretary of Finance, and we were talking about it, we will put it on February 1, which is the first time somebody died in the Philippines. Huh? Of COVID.
Of COVID.
Mainit naman ang ulo mo, sinabi ko na nga yung pangalan mo eh. That is what we meant, Mr. President. Of course, we're all tired. But it should be the first time somebody died of COVID, February 1. Whether it was a time of pandemic or epidemic is beside the point. And I think Senator Tolentino is well, placed when he says pandemic or epidemic, because there might be issues there. The proper thing to do is to be clear, say February 1. And that's the law. It will become dura lex sed lex, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
I accept, so, but we still, subject to style, it's just the wording. Thank you.
Subject to style on the wording. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Okay, Mr. President, we are...
Page 9. Page 9.
Okay, we are on page 9. After line 4, insert a subsection which shall read as, open parenthesis 25, close parenthesis. Left the 30%, open parenthesis 30% in numbers, close parenthesis, cap on the amount appropriated for the Quick Response Fund as provided for in Republic Act number 10121 or the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010. Close quotation, comma, during the existence of the state of national emergency due to COVID-19, semicolon.
All
I
right.
submit.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you.
And renumbered, number 25 becomes 26.
Next, just four more items, Mr. President, all very simple and straightforward. On page 9, line 13, after the word pursuant, insert the word to.
Page 9,
Line
13,
13,
pursuant
to.
to. Any
Pursuant
objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 9, line 20, after the word omissions, insert the word already.
Already. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ito ba yung section 6?
Anything else on page 9?
Huh? Oh, pero hindi yung specify sa section 6? I thought it's
Senator Paul is recognized.
Okay sila dyan? Who? Sorry? Senator
Senator
Grace.
Grace po.
Actually, Mr. President, I have on page 9, but actually it begins from page 8. Line 36, to replace the word commodity with cash.
Sorry, I was distracted. Sorry.
Sorry.
Can you please proceed?
On page 8.
Repeat.
No, before,
Page?
Page 8, before 9, kasi magkadikit din dito eh. Meron.
Okay.
Page 8,
Page 8, line
Line-
36.
line 36,
Replace the word commodity with cash.
and provision of cash assistance program
On the same,
Replace the word
Wait.
commodity.
yeah.
with cash.
With cash, with the word cash.
Okay.
What does the sponsor say?
Ano yun? You will delete cash and...
No,
No.
delete commodity.
Saan commodity? I think we're lost. Page 8, line 6?
36.
36. Because line 6 has the word cash. So,
Also? But, okay.
okay. Line
Okay.
36.
Line 36.
Okay, and provisions. Implement, may I just read it, Mr. President? Implement and expand and enhance Pantawid Pamilya program responsive to the needs posed by the crisis and provisions of commodity assistance. Her Honor is recommending to change that to cash.
Yes,
Okay, ano yan?
Mr. President.
This is an amendment of Senator Drilon's. I have personally no issue with it. Is that more responsive? I throw the question back to the body as I am not
think so, because
familiar.
I think that was the point of making the download easier.
Provision of cash assistance program where the Secretary of the Department of may purchase commodities for emergency
Oo nga.
distribution to the...
Makes sense, yes.
Pwede.
Okay,
And
Pwede.
then,
Accepted.
accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
and then on the same page, line 38, after the word development, delete the words may purchase commodities for emergency distribution to the members of the informal and marginalized sector, and replace it with or the Department of Labor and Employment, where relevant, shall transfer cash or cash vouchers through the local government units or directly to individuals who have no incomes or savings to draw from, including workers in the informal economy and those who are not currently recipients of the current Pantawid Pampamilya program, of an amount adequate to restore capacity to purchase food and other essential items.
Mr. President, may we see it in writing so we can
I-
also show it to the agencies here?
Sure, I will.
And then while I have a few more, if we can just go back to it while they're studying it so we can save time.
Yeah,
Okay?
can we ask Senator Paul
And
to
then-
submit it, and then we can proceed first with page 9, and then we will go back to...
And then there's also part of page 9, just to finish it.
Okay.
Oh,
Further in the same section on page 9, line 2, after the word development, insert the words and the Secretary of the Department of Labor and Employment. Thus, the entire section 4, subsection 24 shall now read as follows. Implement an expanded and enhanced Pantawid Pampamilya program responsive to the needs posed by the crisis and provision of cash assistance program where the Secretary of the Department of Social Welfare and Development or the Department of Labor and Employment, where relevant, shall transfer cash or cash vouchers through the local government units or directly to individuals who have no incomes or savings to draw from, including workers in the informal economy and those who are not currently recipients of the current Pantawid Pampamilya program, of an amount adequate to restore capacity to purchase food and other essential items during the duration of quarantine. To carry out this subsection, the Secretary of the Department of Social Work and Development and the Department of Labor and Employment may approve the temporary emergency standards of eligibility and levels of benefits, subject to style, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll ask for a written copy so we can just It makes sense to me, but I'd just like to confer with the agencies here.
And while they're conferring, I might as well throw this out just for the record.
Sure.
On page 5, kasi maikli na lang to, Mr. President.
Page 5?
On page 5, line 22, after the word government. Hindi. Ito, sorry, scratch that, Mr. President. This was tackled already. So that's it, Mr. President.
Okay.
I will leave a copy with the good sponsor.
Okay, and then we will go back to that
Thank you.
later. Page 8 to page 9. So in the meantime, page 9, any other amendment?
Yes, Mr.
Senator?
President, we still have. Tapos na
Yes.
yung 23, di ba? So, still on page 9, ano ko, omissions and already?
We're already done with line 20.
We're done with line 20. Okay, thank you, Mr. President, for that. Still on page 9, line 21 to 22, delete the phrase violations of the provisions of this act and replace it with any violations of directives issued strictly in accordance with this act.
All right,
I
any
submit.
objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Any directives.
Siguro mga 5 taon eh. Text sa akin.
Hindi ko narinig eh.
Okay ba yun? Tapos eh. Di adopted na siya. Pero still, tatanong ko kay ano to. I'm a little bit worried eh.
Ano yun?
Any
1 minute
directive, it
suspension,
doesn't exist.
Session suspended.
Oh, hindi. Constitutional ba yun? Na yung...
Malabo yung penalty. Dapat to be issued by the President pa yan.
Kaya tubig pa.
It cannot be yung ganun, di ba? Na ganun pa general. Yun na.
Ako na Supreme Court yan pag
Oo eh. Yun din worry ko. Di ano mo na. So yung holding okay ako doon?
Ready to resume? Session resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the
Senator
indulgence
Gordon.
of the President and my good friend, the Senator from Rizal, there is a question, Mr. President, that I would like to raise, and some of our colleagues would like to raise. This is on Section 6 on the matter of penalties. Now, Mr. President, you know, you cannot impose a penalty if there is no clear criminal offense, Mr. President. If you read the section, there are no clear criminal offenses that are specified. For example, if they say hoarding, then you can now choose between 2,000, between the 10,000 pesos or 1 million pesos. So it's a wide swath, Mr. President. So I understand that this was done because the President still has to issue certain pronouncements, Mr. President. But I'm afraid that if we don't make this clear and we start charging people without that law, it will be dismissed, Mr. President. As I said earlier, if memory serves correct, nulum poenam sine lege. No penalty without law.
Ako, sa ilang ginawa ko, I was always very...
So my suggestion, Mr. President, is that we clarify that and that if the good sponsor could identify hoarding or overpricing, then we can cite all these principles under the different sections that will be punishable under this law, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I understand the concern of the gentleman. May I get his opinion as to if we were to specify subsection 5, which refers to, which basically says continue to enforce measures to protect people from hoarding, profiteering, injurious speculation, manipulation of prices, product deception, cartels, monopolies, or other combinations in restraint of trade, or other pernicious practices affecting the supply, distribution, movement of food, clothing, hygiene, sanitation products, medicine, and so on and so forth. Would that suffice for a specific definition of
Are we
the...
giving a penalty for each violation? Because I remember in the anti-terrorism law, there are specific instances where they were penalized for that specific offense, Mr. President.
Well, the existing provision we have now is a general provision in Section 6, no, which just says violations of the rules, regulations, directives shall be punishable with imprisonment of 2 months or a fine of not less than 10,000 but not more than 1 million.
That's correct. It's very
So
wide
it's very
swath.
general, and then if I make reference to that section, it does enumerate about 10 different activities, no? So,
My suggestion, Mr. President, absent the announcement of the President of certain rulings that is going to occur, is that at the very least we cover those lines specifically with the penalty that we think should be provided for, Mr. President. Otherwise, it's all vague. There's no empirical
Why don't
data.
you specify, in addition to acts or omission, etc., acts violation of Section 5 of this law? Of
that
this
was
act.
my question, Mr. President. I was asking for the opinion of
Well, such as the following offenses under Section 5.
Yes.
Shall
No,
be punished.
you don't have to enumerate it if it's already enumerated
The
in Section
offenses
5.
enumerated
Just
in
mention
Section
that
5.
violations of Section 5. Violations
Some will
enumerated
be
in
light
Section
compared
5.
to some of the heavy offenses that are going to be there, Mr. President. So I would strongly suggest that we come out with the specificity on the penalties that must be issued under those sections individually. Individually.
yeah.
So what do you suggest?
I suggest that the author, working with our staff now, specify the different penalties that will be assigned to each violation.
We will ask for the assistance of the agencies present since...
Yes, I already asked them.
Yeah.
And the answer there was that the President is going to issue some pronouncements. That's why it was deliberately done. But if it is left hanging like this,
It's going
when
to...
you try to enforce it, I don't think you'll win.
Yeah.
Just my humble opinion.
Thank you. Yes. So as I mentioned, Mr. President, perhaps we could ask for some rewording of the section.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You can really start off right now and start saying, in the following cases, hoarding, etc., the penalty shall be this in this maximum period or its minimum period or whatever, and then you can actually move on, Mr. President.
Noted. We'll
Ma'am,
do that.
Can you work right away?
Yeah. So, Mr. President, 926, wait na. Still have something on line 9, on page 9. Hindi ba kasama yun? Kasama yun eh. Hindi. For that section, Mr. President, let's hold that until we get clarity on the exact wording. And then
At
one
the
more.
moment, the amendment that you propose stands, which is the word already before penalized.
Yes, but in all likelihood, Mr. President, I will withdraw that and submit something else. But let's keep it there, and
All
then
right.
I will go back. Thank you.
So still on page 9.
Still on. Okay. So we go back. Okay, Mr. President, we're done. We just want to go back to some items that we left.
What page?
Page 3, line 41. Mr. President, a minute suspension. I'm just seeing this now, so I just need to review it.
Session suspended.
Why will it only apply to donation?
Balikan na natin.
can we say? Oh, doesn't matter. But does it fall? Just see where that is. Bakit hindi lang donations? Donations and hindi, kahit fiscal provision, gusto ko magpalitan to add something. Registration of products. Registrations or clearance for the sale of products, whether donated, including donations.
Saan yung mga offenses nila?
Yun donated lang ba yun? Iba ba yung sa kids mo? Iba ba yung kids mo? Sa kids? Iba ba rule mo sa kids? Pag donated mo? But subject pa rin to the regulatory agency. O wala pa lang ganun? May ganun pa rin. Pero pag, so yung mga lumabas na ito, talagang, oo nga, pero ano status no? Nakalagawa ko in-exempt mo din yun for registration. Which madali mo naman gawin kasi, so the only difference is semantics lang naman. Kasi the fact, in both cases, meron kang previous.
Hindi naman sila binibenta rin sa akin. So, wala may register. Kahit hindi siya nagbibenta rin, tatanggapin pa rin natin.
Waka mo na. Pero di ba nagkaroon ng definition ng issue yan, what is fake news? Na-define na ba yan?
Creating panic.
O yun, yung creating panic. My gosh, yung lumabas na fake news, di ba? Oo. Baka you can find lang similar wording. Asan yung donation?
Number 10 po.
Health products regulation. Provided namin is obvious naman that is provided for donations. It doesn't apply to those that don't require at all. In other words, go ka lang, wala ka nang
Like,
they don't know what it is.
yeah.
Kasi that sentence can be interpreted the other way na the
This shall not apply.
kahit saan siya pwede register. Doon naman yung clear naman yun. Okay.
Wala tayong win-win kasi
Okay.
wala
So ito, doon na to. Okay.
Partnership. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Will you introduce it po? Tapos
Sino? Sherwin? Okay. Ito na, on page 2. Oh my God. Sabihin mo kay Majority Floor Leader. May amendment pa patawarin.
And then we also have one more, yung omnibus natin, na renumbered ulit. Yung omnibus pa tayo. For renumbering.
Sa dulo lang.
Mr. President, we're ready to proceed with one item.
Session resumed.
Thank you. On page 3, line 41, after the word delayed, remove the colon, the semicolon, and insert the sentence, and that health products for donation duly certified by the regulatory agency or their accredited third party from countries with established regulation shall automatically be cleared, colon, provided, comma, this shall not apply to health products which do not require a certification or clearance from FDA, semicolon, I submit, Mr. President.
This amends the previous amendment that you have placed there.
Yes, Mr. President, this,
right.
it does.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then can we just reiterate, we need an omnibus renumbering of all the previous amendments
All
to be
right.
sure that everything was captured.
Yes, noted, renumbered.
Pending yun na lang? Ano pa mo?
And then, we have about 3 more items, 2 with Senator Sherwin and 1 on the penalties, Mr. President. Minute suspension,
What about the
please.
amendment of Senator Poe? Did they accept it?
That one too. No, it's still, we are still working on the language. Thank you. A minute suspension.
Session suspended. Malapit na ako mag-stop na ako.
Yeah, walang na-amend dyan. Parang yung patong-patong. Yeah. Di ko mahanap eh. D, 4, 5, 8. Paano ba to? Parang ito na yung nasusunod eh. Kailangan ma-clear to. FDA to eh.
Yun nga, yun naman talaga PE.
Pero ito na.
Ganyan siya. Ganyan yung wording.
Yun yung sinasabi ko. Di ba? So, hindi, yun yung pinapoint out ko nung nasa donations tayo, na paano yung benta. Di ba? Di ba, we talked about donations.
Yeah.
And I said, paano kung sale?
Yeah, yun yung procurement. Yun yung sabi.
Provided further that for goods, devices, ganon. Provided further that for goods, devices, supplies, and other items which need registration, which need registration with and clearance from the FDA. The FDA is hereby authorized to dispense. Hindi na lang natin kung ano yung wording natin sa donation.
Yeah, please. Kasi nandun siya. Wala dun.
yung nakakalat na wrong news. Sa social media.
Ang mangyayari lang dyan, nasa court, ano na lang 10% na witnesses you want to say? What is dismiss for lack or insufficiency?
Oo nga.
Sigurado ang constitution ng pagtitiro.
Oo nga.
Sayang naman yung trabaho natin. Sa kanila.
Hindi, yung ano, okay naman sa akin yung ano.
Yung mga yun. Ano ba yun?
Yung judiciary wala na, tapos yung
Nabasa niyo sa Ministry of Defense ng isa. Meron ka? Oo, pagkalam sa kanila. Kasi daw, mga 60 to 70% daw tayo magkakaroon. Pero susceptible.
members naman kami. Pinapasa na daw natin.
Nag-antay sila sa atin eh.
Tinignan ko na yung cover naman natin lahat.
Madali lang naman yan, madali lang yan.
Like yung FDA, yung gusto nyo naman sa FDA, ginagawa na naman nila di ba? So, okay na ako doon.
Ikaw naman ang ate, di ba?
Naawa naman ako doon.
Ikaw dapat mo siya. Essential authority. It's women's year. Diba?
Hindi sinasabi niya.
And this is with you and harm and SENPO
Okay. And provisions of cash or non-cash,
whichever is more practical.
practicable. Wait, how does it work?
Cash or
Provision of cash,
or non-cash.
whichever is more practical.
practicable.
Assistance program, parang weird.
Provision of assistance program.
Provision of an assistance program, whether cash or non-cash, di ba? Whether cash or non-cash, whichever is more practicable.
Whether
sana. Namatay na sana ng kusa. Virus.
Provisions of and provisions of an assistance program. An assistance program, whether cash or non-cash. Of an assistance program.
Hindi, dali na natin. 2 minutes. Dideklara ko. Resume. Ano? Hindi, 12. Sakto. Well, sasabihin, announce ko naman eh. Hindi mo hintayin nila announce ko. Dapat ko sabihin ng naka-resume o hindi? Hindi nga, kailangan. Session resumed.
Hindi ba't pwedeng cash?
Secretariat is hereby to start the clock.
Okay, so cash and commodities.
Session suspended.
Kaya, basta huwag niyong alisin yung
Ano tayo? Kaya ko bang basahin yan? Pagtawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, responsive to the needs posed by the crisis and Samahan mo na cash or non-cash, whichever is, okay, where the Secretary of the Department of Social Welfare or the Department of Relevant shall transfer cash, comma, cash vouchers or goods through the local government units or directly to households who have no income or savings to draw from, including
Session resumed. Senator Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the Grace Po Amendment on page 8, line 36. Replace the entire section 4, subsection 24 with the following. Implement an expanded and enhanced Pantawid Pamilya Pilipino program, comma, responsive to the need imposed by the crisis, comma, and provision of an assistance program, comma, whether it is cash or non-cash, comma, whichever is more practicable, comma, where the Secretary of Social Welfare and Development, comma, or the Secretary of Labor and Employment, comma, when relevant, comma, shall transfer cash, comma, cash voucher, comma, or goods through the local government units or directly to households who have no incomes or savings to draw from, comma, including households working in the informal economy and those who are not currently recipients of the current Pantawid Pamilya Pilipino program, comma, of an amount adequate to restore capacity to purchase basic food and other essential items during the duration of the quarantine, period. To carry out this subsection, comma, the Secretary of the Department of Social Welfare and Development and the Secretary of the Department of Labor and Employment may approve the temporary emergency standards of eligibility and level of benefits, period. I submit, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is in receipt of a 4-page list of proposed amendments by Senator Coco Pimentel. I will just manifest that a number of them are quite similar to the amendments of our colleagues, which are already carried. One provision on taxation is already included. Another provision was not acceptable to DOF. And a provision on the judiciary was likewise not acceptable to DOJ. And I will now propose some other amendments that he has. Just 2 items, Mr. President.
All right, proceed.
On page 2, line 28, before the word adopt, insert the phrase following World Health Organization guidelines and best practices, comma. I submit.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. And the second item is on page 2, line 38, delete the phrase in line with, and after the word acting, insert the phrase within the letter and spirit of all. I submit.
Within again, sorry?
Within the letter and spirit
of all. All right, any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. A minute suspension.
Session suspended.
Red Cross.
We're waiting lang po. Red Cross. Yung Red Cross partnership. Red Cross partnership.
Ano yun?
Red Cross partnership.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, I do believe that I have read this into, I have made this proposed amendment that came from Senator Ping Lacson, but just for the record, I usually take notes, but given the circumstances, I do not have notes, so I want to be sure that it has been taken up. So if I may just repeat it, Mr. President.
Yes,
And the
yeah,
Secretary
we
can
hear
just
it.
check. On page 3, line 41, after the word delayed, remove the semicolon, insert the sentence, and that health products for donation duly certified by the regulatory agency or their accredited third party from countries with established regulations shall automatically be cleared, colon, provided this shall not apply to health products which do not require a certification or clearance from FDA, semicolon. I submit, Mr. President.
All right, yes, very good. It was approved earlier. It was approved earlier. Nevertheless, adopted.
Ano sabi niya? Red Cross.
Waiting lang kami from
Mr. President, we are awaiting 2 more amendments.
printed copy po.
Minute suspension.
Session suspended.
countervailing?
Number
Countervailing.
one.
What does countervailing mean? Just not following? Number one. So okay naman yun, countervailing. O kaya nga eh. I know it means not following, but disobeying. 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 Okay ka na dyan? Pansin niyo naka-auto.
Kasi yung ano namin, parang gusto na.
Power outfit. Then lipstick na lang po. Ay, sorry.
Yes, meron yung issue about result so di ba nagbabracket tayo pag dinipilit natin? Hindi kasi solo na inamin. So, lahat ng mga binabracket, it means that we should delete it, all of them. Ganun lang. Kaya omnibus na lang tayo sa isip para maayos yung index. Yung mga nakabracket disregard na hindi ko ano meron. All, meron na? Yeah. Bills and index. Finally, Mr. President, consistent with the promise of your kasi pag, di ba, pag when we amended the NIRC, ginaganon natin kasi yun yung, eto kasi wala naman tayong law eh. We're making right now. Parang ano lang, para lang. Will include na rin kasi i-note na, okay na to. Yung fake news PSC, okay ka lang. Okay naman yun, kasi create na promote chaos, panic, anarchy, fear, yeah.
Okay na. Parang okay na. Sabi niya, kaya pa niyang mag-improve ng konti. Tatagal ng konti. Sorry.
Sa PSC, babasahin mo to lahat na lang kasi para hindi na tayo mag-aamin-amin.
So ito. You don't even have to read as follows.
No
We
more
don't
na.
eh. LGU officials disobeying and derelict.
Parang hindi na nag-move. Parang disobeying.
You are a derelict.
Alam ko na.
It's a noun.
What is LGU officials, countervailing, and disobeying? Wala ni countervailing.
Sige.
Oh.
Mr. President, ready to resume. Ready to resume.
Session resumed. Senator Cayetano.
Mr. President, on page 5, line 5, delete the phrase, may engage the services of the, and replace it with the words, partner with. I submit.
Partner with
Sorry.
partner with.
May engage the services of the. You're removing that.
Partner with Philippine Red Cross, wala na yun daw. Kasi nandito.
Sorry, Mr. President.
Again, may he
Yeah.
hear the proposed amendment?
Delete the phrase, may engage the services of,
Mm-hmm.
and replace it with the words, partner with the.
Okay. Partner with the.
So that the phrase would read
Yes.
as partner with the Philippine Red Cross, etc., etc.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Okay. Mr. President, we're ready to propose the amendments on the penalty clause. It is a long one.
All right. This is page
Section 6.
9. Page 9, Section 6.
Yes. Actually, Mr. President, for clarity, I propose that the entire Section 6 be deleted and replaced with the following.
All right. Maybe hear it.
Yes. Section 6, in addition to acts or omissions already penalized by existing laws, the following offenses shall be punishable with imprisonment of 2, open parenthesis, close 2 months, or a fine of not less than 10,000 pesos, but not more than 1 million pesos, or both such imprisonment and fine at the discretion of the court. Semicolon. LGU officials disobeying national government policies in imposing quarantines. Semicolon. That's number 1. 2. Owners and possessors of privately owned and other privately owned hospitals and medical. Sorry, Mr. President, amid suspension.
Privately owned hospital and medical.
Session suspended.
Medical hospital, medical health facilities, including passive, ayun. Wala nang kama to. Kama and others, kama yun. Okay.
Ready to resume, Mr.
All
President.
right. Session resumed.
I'll just repeat number 2. Owners and possessors of privately owned hospitals, medical and health facilities, including passenger vessels, and other establishments who unjustifiably refuse to operate pursuant to the directive of the President. Semicolon. I submit.
Just those two.
No, sorry, there are more. That's number 2.
Okay.
3. Hoarding, profiteering, injurious speculations, manipulation of prices, product deceptions, and cartels, monopolies, or other combinations in restraint of trade or other pernicious practices affecting the supply, distribution, and movement of food, clothing, hygiene and sanitation products, medicine and medical supplies, fuel, fertilizer, chemicals, building materials, implements, machinery, equipment, and spare parts required in agriculture, industry, and other essential services and other articles of prime necessity, whether imported or locally produced or manufactured, semicolon. Number 4, refusal to prioritize and accept contracts for materials and services necessary to promote the herein declared national policy, semicolon. 5, refusal to provide 30-day grace periods provided under Section 4, semicolon. And 6, individuals or groups creating, perpetuating, or spreading false information regarding the COVID-19 crisis on social media and other platforms, such information having no valid or beneficial effect on the population and are clearly geared to promote chaos, panic, anarchy, fear, or confusion, and those participating in cyber incidents that make use or take advantage of the current crisis situation to prey on the public through scams, phishing, fraudulent emails, or other similar acts.
So, tapos na tayo sa act. So, next number 7. Okay.
7, failure to comply with reasonable limitations on the operation of certain transportation sectors or sectors, whether land, sea, or air, and be it private or public, semicolon. And 8, impeding access to roads, streets, and bridges, putting up prohibited encroachments or obstacles, and maintenance of illegal constructions in public places that have been ordered to be removed, semicolon. Next paragraph. Provided, however, that if the offender is a corporation, association, partnership, or any other juridical person, the penalty shall be imposed upon the president, directors, managers, managing partners, as the case may be, who participated in the commission of the offense or who shall have knowingly permitted or failed to prevent the commission of the same. If the offender is an alien, he shall, in addition to the penalties herein prescribed, be deported without further proceedings. Provided further that if the offender is a public official or employee, he shall, in addition to the penalties prescribed herein, suffer perpetual or temporary absolute disqualification from office, as the case may be. I submit, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved, adopted.
I have just one more. Any other from the floor? Because I will say
No
the
more.
word finally.
No, finally.
Mr. President, consistent with the format of our bills, I move to delete all the brackets, including the words and punctuations enclosed in said brackets, and all words in all caps, bold, be properly formatted. I submit.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
There are no more amendments, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Sa wakas, Mr. President, finally. Mr. President, I move to close the period of individual amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of individual amendments is closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1418.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill 1418 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, Senate Bill 1418 is a certified measure, thereby exempted from the 3-day rule under paragraph 2, section 26, article 6 of the Article 6 of the Constitution, may I request the Secretary to read the certification from the President.
The Secretary will read the certification from the President.
March 21, 2020, Senator Vicente C. Soto III, Senate President, the Philippine Senate, Pasay City. Mr. Senate President, pursuant to the provisions of Article 6, Section 26, Paragraph 2 of the 1987 Constitution, I hereby certify to the necessity of the immediate enactment of the attached bill entitled An Act to Declare the Existence of a National Emergency Arising from the Coronavirus 2019 COVID-19 Situation, a Unified National Policy in connection therewith, and to authorize the President of the Republic of the Philippines for a limited period and subject to restrictions to exercise powers necessary and proper to carry out the declared national policy and for other purposes, in order to authorize the President to exercise powers necessary to carry out urgent measures to meet the COVID-19 national health emergency. Very truly yours, signed, Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading Senate Bill number
1418.
1418. May I request the Senate Secretary to read the title of the bill and proceed to a roll call vote.
The Secretary will read the title of the bill and proceed with the roll call vote on third reading.
Senate number 1418, an act declaring the existence of a national emergency arising from the coronavirus disease 2019 COVID-19 situation and a national policy in connection therewith, and authorizing the President of the Republic of the Philippines for a limited period and subject to restrictions to exercise powers necessary and proper to carry out the declared national policy and for other purposes. Roll call vote. Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Revilla, Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri. Senate President Soto III.
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, some of our colleagues who were unable to physically attend today's special session due to the emergency wish to express their position on the measure via phone patch. May we now allow them to do so, Mr. President?
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
Mr. President, with the kind indulgence of our colleagues, there are 7 senators who signified that they will express their position on the vote. I will call first on the list Senator Zubiri, Mr. President. Mix. Ikaw na, Mix. Mix.
Yes. I vote yes to this measure to support the government's move to solve the problem of COVID-19 as soon as possible and to help our people with their cash assistance program. Therefore, I vote yes to the measure.
All right? Mix. Okay. All right. Yes, tapos na. Yes, I got it. All right. Next on the list, Senator Angara.
Thank you.
Kising ka pa? Oh, sige. Sandali. Speakerphone kita. Speakerphone kita.
President, I'd like to congratulate the body, especially our colleagues who worked late, and I vote yes in support of the measure. Mabuhay.
Right. Sunny. All right. Say. All right. Okay. Move. Hindi pa pwede.
Pwede. Lift mo na yung ano. Oh, okay.
Speakerphone kita. Joel, speakerphone kita. No, Joel. Joel.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. At the onset, let me congratulate and commend the sponsor of the measures, Senator Pia Cayetano, and of course our beloved Senate President. Again, thank you, SP, for mourning with our family and our dear colleagues. Just to give a few paragraph message for the sake of our more than 100 million population facing the COVID-19 pandemic, I vote yes. With this grant of special authority, the government will be able to ramp up its efforts in testing as soon as resources are available, while ensuring that our healthcare system is stocked well with essential protective equipment to keep frontline workers safe from the disease. The bill will also enable the national government to upgrade the capacity of public medical facilities, especially in the provinces, by purchasing enough ventilators, among other necessary equipment. I am sure that this measure will also provide workers, especially the most vulnerable in our society, the no work, no pay sector, and workers in the informal economy, with sufficient subsidy per month per household, covering the targeted 18 million households across the country. Our people will have food on their tables and their basic needs will be met, making them feel secure and reaffirming how their government works for them. That would be all. And again, thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President.
Bilangin nyo nagtitelecom. Ito pang-apat na.
General, i-speakerphone kita. General.
Yes. Well.
Speakerphone ka na.
Yeah.
General.
Yeah.
Naka-speakerphone ka na.
Yes po. Sige. Okay.
Ano po yung manifestation nyo?
I vote yes. Yes, Mr. President.
Yun lang po.
I vote yes in support of this mission. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I am voting yes in support of this mission.
Okay. Thank you.
God bless us all. God bless us all.
Thank you, General. Ingat kayo. Okay po. Si Bato. Hindi niya ba naintindihan? Hindi maintindihan. Bisaya eh. Risa, speakerphone kita. Alright.
Okay, salamat po sa acting majority leader, Senator Sherwin. At magandang haping gabi, Mr. President, at mga kasama dyan sa Senado. I am grateful for the inclusion of my amendment on cash transfers, but I regret that I cannot vote in favor of the measure. I will submit my explanation of no vote to be spread into the records, given the time, and also to enable the colleagues and the Senate Secretariat to go home sooner rather than later. Salamat po, Mr. President. Salamat po, Senator Sherwin.
Thank you. Ay, Sen Kiko, i-speakerphone ko kayo Sen Kiko, you're on speakerphone.
Yes, magandang gabi sa kanilang lahat at maraming salamat sa pagkakataong ito. We would like to manifest our vote. It is a vote of yes, but with serious reservations. And the reasons for this we shall be explaining in a written explanation of our vote to be submitted at a later time. We vote yes also with both a warning and an admonition. Admonition to the IATF that our people deserve better from them, and that the conflicting policy pronouncements and confusing policy pronouncements in the past 2 weeks ought to be the last, and that we also call on them, and we should see. We will call them out should we see that the law and funding we have put in place are not being implemented as envisioned. Beginning today and until the day we have defeated this virus, we will urge and call out the IATF and this administration to ensure that the law is effectively implemented and the health and welfare of our citizens protected and upheld. To reiterate, I vote yes with serious reservations. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And last, Mr. President, Senator Nancy Binay, who I will call.
Dito.
Nance, speakerphone kita. Yeah, Nance.
Okay. Oh,
Speakerphone ka na.
yes. Naka-speakerphone, ha?
Yes.
Okay.
Anong vote?
I vote yes. Hello?
Are you explaining?
Hindi na. To say I vote yes.
All right. Thank you.
Umaga na.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
I vote yes, Mr. President.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Your
Thank you,
vote's
Nancy.
recorded. Good night. Ano ito?
Ha? Okay na. Wala akong number niya
Mr. President, Mr. President, Senator Villar wishes to manifest her vote as well.
Basahin ko.
Ano to?
Tawag.
Oo nga eh. Bong, go na. Oo, kaya nga, baka.
Papagalitan ka pa niya. Ano ka kay Mama Bear? Ano ka kay Mama Bear?
Kaya nga, baka. Hello? 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 Si Titi Cynthia? Si Senator Gatchalento? Nasa Senado ho kami. Hello, Tita Cynthia? Ilalagay ko kayo sa speakerphone, ha? Kung ano yung boto nyo? You can say you vote yes or no. Doon sa, ano, doon sa, nung bill? Dito sa Bayanihan. Teka, sandali, tita. Teka, speakerphone ko kayo. Okay. Yan, Tita City, nasa speakerphone na kayo.
Okay. I vote yes. Thank you.
Alright, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Right, Mr. President, we completed all the colleagues who wish to express their position on the matter, Mr. President. And just to reiterate, I vote on the affirmative, and I will just submit my explanation of vote into the records, Mr. President. And
All right. Thank you, Majority Leader, Senator
Mr.
Gatchalian.
President, Senator
just-
Bong Revilla wants to explain his vote.
Explain his vote. But we can do that after the announcement
Yes,
of the votes.
sorry, Mr. President. Sorry.
Yes. So with 12 plenary affirmative votes, 0 plenary negative votes, 0 plenary abstention, and 8 members of the Senate who expressed their position through telecommunication, Senate Bill 1418 is approved on third reading. Senator Revilla is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sa panahong ito, sa pamunahan, tumitingin ang taong bayan kung paano natin malalagpasan ang krisis na ito bilang isang bayan. Our collective victory as a nation will be based on the individual triumphs of each of our kababayans. The measure that we pass today will therefore make or break our country in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Bumoto po ako upang ipasa ang panukalang ito sa paniniwalang malaki ang maidudulot nito upang maibsan ang pangamba ng ating mga mamamayan, matugunan ng gutom ng sikmura at pangangailangan ng ating mga kababayan at maipabot ang tulong na minimithi ng karamihan. Kaagibat nito, tinitiyak natin na makarating sa taong bayan ang kinakailangan nilang ayuda para mabuhay at makaraos, kasabay ng pagbigay ng panggastos para sa mga nangangailangan. Sisikapin nating walang maiiwan at lahat ay may pagkain sa kanilang hapag-kainan. Kaya naman, ang panukalang ito ay hindi lamang para sa mga may sakit, mahihirap, naulila, nawalan ng trabaho, nagugutom o walang makain. Para din ito sa mga magigiting natin mga doktor, nurses, pulis, sundalo at lahat ng na nangunguna upang masugpo ang problemang pangkalusugan na kinaharap natin ngayon. We give our frontliners, especially our health workers, the necessary boost in the arm to soldier on. Bibigyan natin sila ng kinakailangang ayuda para maprotektahan sila at higit na mapaglingkuran ang sambayanan. Higit sa kung ano paman, ngayon tayo dapat magkaisa at magtulungan. Napakalaki pong suliranin ang dinulot ng COVID-19. Ngunit sa kabilang banda, may naidulot din itong makabuluhan para sa atin. Nagkaroon tayo ng oras para sa pamilya, pinahalagahan natin ang ating kalusugan, nalaman natin ang ating mga kakulangan, at mas naging matatag tayo sa harap ng panganib at suliranin. Sa gitna ng banta ng COVID-19 pandemic, buhay na buhay ang bayanihan at pagkakaisa sa ating bayan ngayon. Sa pamamagitan ng bayanihan at pagkakaisa, magmumula ang paggaling natin bilang isang bansa. Indeed, we will heal as one. Ang mahalagang tanong lamang na kinaharap natin ngayon, kaya ba natin ito? Naway sabay-sabay nating sagutin, kaya natin ito. Kaya natin ito. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Thank you. Before I recognize Senator Tolentino, we would just like to take this opportunity to thank our Executive Secretary Medaldia for bearing with us the whole day, the Secretary of the Department of Finance, Secretary Dominguez, Ani Dominguez, Secretary of the Department of Justice, Secretary Guevara, the Secretary of the DSWD, Secretary Bautista, and of course our Undersecretary from the Department of Health, Yusek Eric Domingo, and a big congratulations to Senator Pia Cayetano for sponsoring the measure with flying colors. So, most important of all is the man who holds the purse, the Secretary of the Department of Budget and Management, my brother, Secretary Abisado. Thank you very much to all of you for being here the whole day. Senator Tolentino, you're recognized.
Mr. President, allow me to explain my vote in a few sentences. I vote in the affirmative because I believe that in this time of a public health crisis, the President of the Philippines must be given the powers to the fullest extent possible to respond to the critical needs of our health sector, to secure food security for all, and to bolster the economy among the wide range of measures needed to maximize the country's resources in its fight against COVID-19. I vote yes, Mr. President, as I temporarily rejoin in spirit the ranks of our mayors, city mayors, municipal mayors, governors, who will now be given more resources, especially with the utilization of their now expanded calamity funds. Sila po talaga ang sumasabak, Mr. President, katulong ang ating pamahalaang nasyonal. The rest of my explanation, Mr. President, may I just ask the majority floor leader to cause the insertion as part of the records of this chamber my explanation of vote. Maraming salamat
into
po,
the
Mr.
records.
President.
All right. Senator Manny Pacquiao.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm so happy for this passage of this very important bill. One thing that I can say before we end, before we adjourn, I'm hoping that the implementation maayos yung pag-implement, Mr. President. And always remember these words. In unity, there's a victory. So, magkakaisa tayong lahat para sa mga mahirap na tao. Maraming salamat. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, once again, I voted on the affirmative, and I will just insert my explanation into the records. But, Mr. President, I'd like to take this advantage to once again remind the executive, especially the economic managers who are here with us. Yung araw na ito, Mr. President, it's time to help the 18 million families who are looking for ways to feed their families and to feed their children. Malaking hamon ho ito para sa ating lahat. Ito yung panahon na kailangan ho natin magtulong-tulong. Mahaba pa ho ang laban, pero kung tayo po magkakaisa, kaya natin lampasan ho ito. So, Mr. President, with that, I would like to ask for a 1-minute suspension, Mr. President.
Before we suspend, there is a second additional reference of business coming from the House of Representatives. We have to read into the records. But yes, what is the pleasure of Senator
Yes, Mr.
Gordon?
President, I guess you're about to answer it's just a query, Mr. President. What is the current parliamentary situation on the bill? Are we going to have a bicameral conference committee, or are they just going to adopt the version of the Senate?
We are now in the process of sending the approved copy on third reading of the Senate version to the House of Representatives. We are in receipt now of their version, and in a short while we will receive word from the House of Representatives if they will be adopting the Senate version. And if they do so, a bicameral conference committee is no longer necessary.
After which we can go on third reading. Would that be correct, Mr. President?
No, we already on third reading. That means we will just acknowledge that it becomes an enrolled bill.
Yes,
If the
Mr.
House ratifies, and adopts our version, we will just proceed with the enrolled bill.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. So the additional reference of business, Madam Secretary.
Second additional reference of business, message from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on March 23, 2020, it passed House Number 6616 entitled An Act Declaring the Existence of a National Emergency Arising from the Coronavirus Disease 2019 COVID-19 Situation and a National Policy in Connection therewith, and authorizing the President of the Republic of the Philippines for a limited period and subject to restrictions to exercise powers necessary and proper to carry out the declared national policy and for other purposes in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate.
Referred to the Committee on Rules. So in the meantime, the session is suspended while we await word from the House.